I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
The palace did not erupt with noise. It fell silent. One signature, placed beneath the royal seal, changed the balance of power inside the monarchy. Charles had made his final decision. Princess Anne would step into a historic new role, one that gave her authority over palace discipline, royal conduct, and the inner order of the crown. And when Camilla heard it, her face changed completely. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles watched the Queen absorb the words, and for a moment, even he seemed to understand that this was not just an appointment. It was a line drawn through the heart of the family. The royal steward of the Crown Council, a newly confirmed role, meaning Anne would oversee private royal order, conduct, access, and emergency decisions inside the monarchy, now belonged to his sister. The Crown Council meant the small inner group trusted to guide sensitive royal decisions before they reached the public stage. And Charles had not offered Anne a decoration. He had handed her authority. Camilla did not answer at first. She kept her hand on the chair as if the room had shifted beneath her. The queen consort had survived storms before, but this one was different because it came from inside the palace, from the man beside her, and from the one woman she knew would never soften duty to protect comfort. Charles had made the decision permanent, not temporary, and that detail cut deepest. A temporary duty could fade. A permanent role could reshape everything. Anne accepted the news with the kind of restraint that made courtiers nervous. She understood the burden instantly. This placed her between the king, the queen, William, and the silent machinery of the household. Anne would now review private access inside royal residences, staff protocols, ceremonial order, and family involvement in official spaces. That meant doors could close, meetings could change, influence could be questioned, and no one, not even Camilla, could pretend it was only symbolic. William learned before the final confirmation, and the prince said very little, which made his quiet support even more powerful. He knew what this meant for the future. He also knew what it meant for Catherine, for his children, and for the fragile trust holding the monarchy together. Charles needed someone who could enforce order without begging for permission. Anne was that person. She had always been that person. Camilla finally spoke, but her voice carried more shock than anger. She asked whether Anne's new power was meant to protect the crown or contain the queen. Charles did not rush to answer. That silence became its own confession. Because once he placed Anne at the center of royal order, every private relationship inside the palace suddenly became part of a much larger battle. This was not only a decision about rank, it was about trust. Charles saw Anne as the one person who would not bend. Anne saw duty where others saw politics. William saw protection for the future. Camilla saw something else entirely. A door closing. A warning delivered, without being called a warning. And a sister-in-law, suddenly standing, where influence used to be. Charles knew the palace had entered dangerous ground, because every private choice now carried public weight. The crown, meaning the monarchy as both a family and a national institution, could not survive on affection alone. It needed rules strong enough to hold even when emotions pulled in the opposite direction. The king had spent too long watching quiet tensions turn into whispered loyalties, and he understood that someone had to stand above the noise. Anne had that kind of steel. She did not chase praise. She did not soften a truth because it made the room uncomfortable. She carried duty like a promise, and Charles trusted that promise more than any careful smile. Camilla felt the threat before anyone named it. The queen consort knew Anne had never been easy to charm, and that made the new role feel personal. Anne did not play palace games gently. She did not pretend not to notice when lines were crossed. She remembered tone, timing, pressure, silence. And now, with written authority behind her, that memory had power. Camilla could accept a title given to Anne in public. What unsettled her was the quiet reach behind it. A role built around order could touch access, meetings, staff, and influence. It could decide who entered a room before a decision was made. William stood apart, but his silence was not empty. The prince understood exactly why Charles had chosen Anne, because he had asked for clear boundaries during a private conversation held without aides present. That recorded family note, kept in the king's private briefing file, showed William choosing his words carefully, before telling his father that the future could not be protected by hope alone. He wanted Catherine shielded from palace instability. He wanted his children kept away from old rivalries. He wanted rules that could not be bent by charm, pressure, or habit. Anne accepted only after Charles made one promise. Her authority had to be written down, not whispered behind closed doors. The king agreed, because he knew Anne would never carry blame without power, and Anne knew she would never accept duty dressed up as decoration. That was why the appointment frightened people. It was clear. It was official. It could be enforced. Camilla said nothing, as the meaning settled around her. The queen's stunned silence became more dangerous than anger, because everyone understood. She was already measuring what this meant for her place beside the king. But the real reason Charles chose Anne was buried in a moment the family had tried very hard to forget. Every royal crisis has a moment people later pretend was smaller than it was. For this one, it happened behind closed doors at Balmoral. A dinner meant to calm the family became the incident that hardened Charles's mind. A single exchange across the table left Anne stone-faced, William silent, and Camilla visibly wounded. After that night, nothing inside the palace felt informal again. Charles had hoped the evening would steady everyone, but the king sensed trouble before the first serious subject was raised. The Balmoral candlelight dinner was a private royal gathering at Balmoral Castle, used here as a family meeting, where senior royals discussed future duties, household access, and sensitive decisions away from the public eye. It mattered because this was not gossip over dinner. It was about who could enter key conversations, who could shape palace planning, and who would be trusted when the monarchy needed discipline more than charm. Charles knew the family could not keep drifting through half-spoken tensions. Anne knew it too. William understood it in his own quiet way. Camilla felt the danger, because the conversation moved closer and closer to influence. Camilla finally asked why Anne had been included in discussions usually kept between Charles and the direct heirs. The queen did not shout, but the question landed sharply, because everyone understood what she meant. Anne looked across the table and did not flinch. She told Camilla that duty was not inherited through comfort, and the room froze around those words. Charles lowered his eyes, not because he disagreed, but because Anne had spoken the truth he had been avoiding. William stayed silent, and that silence hurt Camilla more than any sentence could have done. The prince did not rescue her from the moment. He did not soften Anne's words. He let them stand. The damage deepened when a staff scheduling file came up in the conversation. A scheduling file meant the written plan showing who attends private meetings, who receives access, and how official duties are arranged behind palace doors. That detail mattered because it proved the tension was no longer emotional alone. Private family pressure had begun touching official planning, and Charles could not ignore the risk. If access could be shaped quietly, then authority could be weakened quietly too. Anne saw the danger clearly. William saw how easily it could reach Catherine and the children. Camilla saw the room turning cold around her. Charles found Anne alone after the meal, and the king did not need to ask what she thought. In a documented account later placed in his private briefing notes, Anne told him that if he wanted order, he had to stop asking people to behave and start giving someone authority to enforce it. Charles heard the sentence like a warning. Anne had not begged for power. She had named the vacuum. That sentence became the foundation of the role that would later stun Camilla. And by the time the appointment reached the queen's ears, the decision had already passed through the one place she feared most, Anne's judgment. Camilla did not raise her voice at first. That made the moment worse. She sat across from Charles, the confirmation papers between them, and asked whether this was a role for Anne or a sentence for everyone else. Charles did not look away. Anne's name hung in the room like a verdict, and for the first time, the queen felt the palace shifting beneath her. Charles had chosen to face her himself, and that choice carried its own pain. The confirmation papers meant the written approval that made Anne's new authority official, not a private idea that could be softened later. The king could have allowed courtiers to deliver the message, but he knew Camilla deserved to hear it from him. That mattered, because this decision did not only touch schedules and rooms, it touched marriage, trust, influence, and the private space between a husband and wife, who also carried the weight of a crown. Camilla stared at the pages, as if the words might change if she waited long enough. The queen saw the sections outlining Anne's power over internal conduct, formal access, and household arrangements during sensitive royal periods. Formal access meant who could enter private royal meetings, attend restricted planning sessions, or move through certain palace spaces when serious decisions were being made. The detail struck Camilla hard, because these were the quiet paths where influence lived. They were not always public, they were not always announced, but they shaped everything before the world ever saw the result. Charles heard the hurt before she said it. Camilla asked whether he no longer trusted her judgment, and the question wounded the king, because it forced him to separate the woman beside him from the institution he had sworn to protect. He set his pen down slowly. The sound seemed small, but it carried the weight of a closing gate. He told her trust was not the issue. Control was, and that single word changed the air between them. Camilla pulled back as if the answer had reached farther than she expected. The queen understood then that Anne could now step into matters once handled through personal channels, soft conversations, old habits, and careful timing. Anne would not need to shout. She would only need to review, approve, restrict, or refuse. That was the danger. Power did not always arrive with drama. Sometimes it arrived as a signature, a file, and a sister who never looked away. Charles made the final wound deeper when he admitted William had been informed before the deal. Confirmation. The prince had known. He had not objected. Camilla felt not merely surprised, but surrounded, because the future king's quiet support meant Anne's authority reached into the next reign as well as the present one. Charles tried to explain that William wanted stability, that Anne offered discipline, that the monarchy needed hard edges before another private conflict became a public crisis. Camilla stood before he finished speaking. The queen did not slam the door. She did not break the silence with rage. She simply left the sentence unfinished between them, and that unfinished sentence became the first crack in the public calm. Yet the true power of Anne's appointment was not in the title itself, but in the invisible machinery now moving behind it. Anne did not celebrate. She did not smile for the room. When the final briefing was placed before her, she read every line as if searching for a trap. This was not a crown, not an honor, not a decoration. It was a burden with teeth. And Anne understood something others had missed. Whoever controlled palace order controlled the monarchy's future. Anne sat alone with the file long after the others had left, and the silence around her felt heavier than applause ever could. The final briefing meant the private written summary explaining what her new authority allowed her to do, who she answered to, and which palace decisions now required her review. That mattered because this was not about one uncomfortable family argument. It was about whether the monarchy could stop private pressure from shaping public duty. Her new position gave her direct involvement in internal royal conduct reviews, household discipline, formal event access, and emergency continuity planning. Conduct reviews meant checking whether royal behavior, access, or influence was harming the order of the crown. Emergency continuity planning meant preparing clear lines of authority if the family faced illness, absence, or crisis. Charles had made the structure impossible to ignore. The king placed Anne close enough to the center that senior aides could not sidestep her, and that changed the palace overnight. She would report directly to him, not to courtiers nervous about upsetting Camilla, not to staff trained to soften every difficult message, and not to quiet voices moving through side doors. Charles understood why that mattered. He needed discipline that could survive emotion. Anne understood it too, and that knowledge made her remove her glasses for a moment, not in triumph, but in strain. She knew this role would make her feared by people she had known for decades. William came to her privately before the day was over, and the prince did not waste words. He thanked Anne with the careful tone of a man who had seen too much damage come from uncertainty. Anne listened without softening, but she heard the worry beneath his restraint. William needed someone older, tougher, and less vulnerable to pressure. He needed someone who could protect Catherine and the children from old rivalries before those rivalries reached the next reign. Anne did not promise comfort. She promised order. Anne demanded one condition before accepting the full force of the role. The boundary had to be written down. No unofficial family pressure could alter schedules, staff decisions, or access to sensitive spaces without review. Charles agreed, because he knew whispered power had become too dangerous. The king also knew Camilla would feel the change immediately, because procedure could do what confrontation could not. It could reduce influence without raising a voice. A senior courtier saw the truth before most of the household did. Camilla's informal reach had been narrowed overnight, not through humiliation, but through rules. The courtier understood that this was why the decision was so powerful. Nobody had accused the queen. Nobody had named her as the problem. Yet everyone could feel the palace moving away from personal habit and toward written control. Anne closed the file at last, but the weight did not leave her hands. The first test of her authority was already coming, faster than anyone expected, and Camilla would be forced to face the new reality in front of the household itself. The palace could survive a private argument, but it could not hide what happened when Anne's authority was used for the first time. The first sign was not a speech. It was a door. A simple palace door, guarded by protocol, became the symbol of everything that had changed. Camilla arrived expecting routine access to a private planning meeting. Instead, an aide stepped forward, voice low, face pale, and said the meeting had been restricted under Anne's new authority. Camilla stopped walking. Camilla looked at the aide as if she had misheard him, but the silence around her confirmed every word. The private planning meeting meant a closed royal discussion, where ceremony details, household access, and sensitive family arrangements were reviewed before reaching the public calendar. That mattered, because these meetings shaped who held influence before official decisions were announced. They decided who entered the room early, who heard concerns first, and who could quietly guide the final shape of royal duty. For years, the queen had moved through those spaces with confidence. Now, one instruction had stopped her at the threshold. Staff lowered their eyes, and that made the humiliation sharper. Camilla did not need anyone to say the message aloud. No one moved through the palace by habit anymore. No one entered because they always had. Anne's review had turned routine access into permission, and permission could be denied. The queen's shock hardened into controlled anger, but she kept her voice low. She asked whether Charles knew. The aide swallowed before answering. The king had approved the restriction in advance. Anne appeared moments later, calm enough to make the corridor feel colder. She did not rush. She did not apologize before speaking. She told Camilla the restriction was not personal, and the queen's expression tightened, because those words carried the cruelty of procedure. Anne had not insulted her. She had simply enforced a boundary. That was worse. An insult could be challenged. A boundary approved by Charles could stand. Camilla understood then what the meeting contained. It was not just a ceremony review. Royal ceremonies meant formal public events where the family's roles, seating, order, and duties showed the country who mattered and who stood close to power. This meeting also covered household access, involving William, Catherine, and the children's future roles. That detail cut deep, because the next generation was being protected behind a wall. And now, controlled. The prince's family had become part of the reason for the restriction, and Camilla could feel the future moving without her hand on it. Anne held her ground, while the queen searched her face for softness. She found none. Anne's authority was not symbolic. It could close doors, limit influence, and force even the most senior figures to obey written order. Charles had made sure of that. The king had turned a private family concern into a working system. Camilla stepped back at last. She did not make a scene. She did not give the staff the relief of anger. She simply turned and left. And the quietness of her exit unsettled everyone, more than an outburst could have. Because silence meant she was no longer reacting. She was thinking. And then, away from aides, seals, and corridors, two women who had spent years circling each other finally faced the truth without protection. There were no aides in the room this time. No papers. No carefully arranged chairs. Just Anne standing near the window, and Camilla entering with the wounded dignity of someone who knows she has already lost ground. For years, they had spoken through silence, rank, and distance. Now the new role stripped all of that away, leaving only two women and one impossible truth. Camilla had requested the meeting herself, and that alone revealed how deeply the corridor incident had shaken her. Private meeting meant a conversation held away from staff, advisors, and official notes, where no one could soften the words afterward or hide behind procedure. That mattered, because the queen no longer wanted a palace explanation. She wanted to know whether Anne's new authority had been designed to contain her. She wanted to hear it from Anne's mouth, not from Charles, not from a courtier, and not from another carefully worded palace file. Anne agreed on one condition: no aides, no witnesses, no one standing close enough to rescue either woman from the truth. That condition mattered, because Anne understood the difference between a royal dispute and a human wound. The crown, meaning the monarchy as both a family and a public institution, could absorb rules and titles, but people absorbed shame. Camilla had been stopped at a door in front of staff, and Anne knew the queen had not come only to challenge authority. She had come carrying humiliation. Camilla spoke first, and every word carried years of survival. She told Anne she had spent too long earning her place to be treated as a danger inside her own home. The queen did not beg. She did not plead. She named the wound clearly. She had stood beside Charles through storms, judgment, suspicion, and public coldness. Now, after all of that, Anne's role made her feel watched, measured, and quietly reduced. Camilla said she could accept order, but she would not accept being treated like a threat. Anne did not soften, but she did not strike either. She answered with quiet resolve, saying the crown was not simply a home when choices made inside. It could shake the country outside. Anne told Camilla that love could belong to a room, but authority belonged to the monarchy. That distinction hurt, because it was true. The queen wanted the palace to remember what she had endured. Anne wanted the palace to remember what it could lose. Anne then revealed the part Camilla had not expected. In a recorded private conversation with Charles, kept in the king's confidential household notes, he had resisted the appointment at first, because he knew it would wound his wife. The king had not moved against Camilla lightly. He had paused. He had argued. He had carried the cost before he signed the decision. Anne explained that Charles accepted only when he understood that private influence had come too close to public consequence. Camilla heard that and fell silent. The queen realized the decision had not been born from spite. That almost made it worse. If Anne's authority had been personal, Camilla could fight it. If Charles had acted from anger, she could challenge him. But fear for the monarchy was harder to defeat. Camilla stopped fighting the title in that moment and started facing what it said about her. Standing. The meeting did not heal the wound. It changed its shape. And by morning, the palace could no longer keep the story contained, because the country saw one image that said more than any official statement. The story broke not with shouting, but with a photograph and 5 words that traveled faster than any palace clarification. By breakfast, Britain was staring at the new order inside the monarchy. Anne's appointment was no longer a private correction. Camilla's stunned reaction was no longer a closed-room secret. The palace had changed, and the public could feel it before anyone explained it. Charles saw the statement before the country did, and the king understood that one careful page could not control the storm behind it. The formal statement meant the palace's official written message to the public, used to confirm major decisions in clear, controlled language. It named Anne as royal steward of the Crown Council, a role described as protecting stability and continuity. Stability meant keeping the monarchy steady during pressure. Continuity meant making sure royal duties, authority, and public service could continue, even when family tensions or personal crises threatened to disrupt them. That mattered, because the decision was no longer hidden inside rooms and files. It now belonged to the nation. Camilla watched the morning coverage alone, and the untouched tea beside her said what her face refused to show. The queen heard commentators weigh every word, asking whether Anne's rise meant her own influence had been quietly narrowed. Camilla did not need them to say defeat. She heard it in the pauses. She heard it in the way they described Anne as disciplined, trusted, and impossible to bend. The queen had spent years surviving judgment from outside the palace. Now she was watching the public discuss a wound that had begun inside it. Charles saw the same broadcast from his desk, and the king briefly closed his eyes. He had chosen order, but order had a cost. He had protected the monarchy, yet he had exposed his wife to a new kind of pain. A broadcaster framed the decision as the most serious internal restructuring of royal authority in years, placing Anne at the heart of discipline and palace order. Restructuring meant changing how power and responsibility worked behind the scenes. That mattered, because this was not a new title for ceremony. It was a new map of control. Anne appeared on the front page beside Charles, under the headline, "The King's Iron Choice." The image became the whole story in one blow. Anne looked steady. Charles looked resolved. Camilla was absent, and that absence became its own message. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered near the gates, some praising Anne's strength, others whispering that the Queen had suffered a public defeat. Camilla heard those whispers before anyone brought them to her. The Queen did not crumble, but something inside her settled into a colder shape. Charles had made the choice. Anne had accepted the burden. The country had seen the line drawn. And when the noise finally faded, what remained was not scandal, but the cold shape of consequence.